Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whichever location you are watching my YouTube channel. A very warm welcome on the QuestPond Videos YouTube channel. So today what are we doing? Today we are doing Angular basics. So we are doing Angular basics in 1 hour, right? So in 1 hour, we'll be covering the fundamentals of Angular like components, modules, expression, decorators, declaration, bootstrap. So you can see here, we have like 16 chapters. So in this 1 hour, we will go step by step. We will run our first Angular application using the CLI. We will understand each and every component, what Angular has. So there are 16 chapters. We have 1 hour of timing and we will try to cover the basics. Now, please note that this is a basic session. In case you are looking for intermediate and advanced sessions, you can go to questpond.com, where I have covered intermediate and advanced session. But I think even if you learn these basic things, what I'm teaching today, you should be well versed, to at least understand what Angular is, right? Now, Angular has a lot of prerequisites. So before you start learning Angular, there are a lot of prerequisites. For example, you need to understand Node, you need to understand TypeScript, you need to understand VS Code, you need to understand the Angular CLI, some JSON files, and so on. So what I've done is, the first 40 minutes, or I'll say till chapter 7, I have not discussed what is Angular. I have just gone through the prerequisite of Angular. So first, for the first 7 chapters, or I can say for the first 40 minutes, please let me teach the prerequisite. Once the prerequisite is done, then from chapter 8, I have started with what is Angular. So let us get started. In order to learn Angular, the first thing what we need to learn is, we need to learn Node. If you do not know Node, then forget about learning Angular. You cannot even install Angular, because the Angular installation is so complex that you need to have some kind of a framework to do that, right? So that's what exactly this Node will help us. So what exactly is this Node? This Node is nothing but it is a JavaScript runtime. In other words, you can run JavaScript using Node, right? So if you see at this moment, you can run JavaScript only inside the browser, right? But if you can run JavaScript outside the browser, then you can create desktop application, you can create web servers, you can do whatever you want, right? So what they have done is, they have used this Chrome V8 engine. If you look at the Chrome engine, it is one of the beautiful and the best engine for JavaScript, right? So they have taken this V8 engine separately out, and using this, I can go and I can run JavaScript outside the browser. So that's what exactly is Node. So Node is a fully programming platform for people who want to code fully in JavaScript. Okay, so in that we have HTTP, we have file components, we have URL components, we have NPM and a lot of things. Now, for Angular purpose, we need to just learn NPM, Node Package Manager, because here the intention is not to make you a Node programmer, but to make you an Angular programmer, right? So in this video, we will just stick to Node NPM. So the first thing is we need to go and install Node. So for that, you need to go to nodejs.org. You can see the URL on the top over here on my browser. And you can see that there are 2 setups out here. At this moment, I'm logged in with the Windows operating system. So it is showing me here Windows 64. But in case you are logged in using Linux or something else, it will show the setups accordingly. You can see there are 2 versions out here. One is recommended for most user and the other one is latest features. So this recommended for most user, this version is the version which is stable. It is there for some time. Most people are using it and it has less defects. But this latest one has the latest features, but it is possible that it is unstable. It is going through some test and so on. So in case if you are using it for project purpose, I would suggest to use this version 8.11. But in case if you want to just learn, then you can probably go and download this setup. Once you install Node, then in your installation somewhere, you can see something like this, Node.js, right? And you can see here this Node.js command prompt from where you can go and you can fire NPM commands, Node Package Manager commands, right? So as we said over here, I will not be teaching you Node programming, but we will learn only NPM, because for Angular, we just need NPM and not the whole programming suite, right? So in order to fire the NPM commands, I'll come to what exactly is NPM. You need to go to this Node.js command prompt, and from here you can go and you can fire NPM. So the first step is please go ahead and download this setup. So the first thing is, Let us first try to understand the concept of Node Package Manager. Or I'll say rather let us go more basic and let us try to understand the concept of package manager. Because there are a lot of package managers, like we have Maven, we have NuGet, and we are talking about Node, right? So a package manager is a software application which will help us to find the software package, get the metadata of that software package, install it in your local system, manage that software package in your local system, and uninstall it if you want it, right? For example, now let us say you have a lot of software packages, which are lying on the internet. So they have their own domain, own URL, own website. So it is so difficult that you have to go to that website, you have to download the setup, you have to install it, right? So rather than that, the package manager says, just tell the name of the software, I will hunt it, I will install it, I will configure it so that you can use in your application. So we have Maven package manager, which is for Java. We have NuGet package manager, which is for .NET. And now we are talking about Node package manager, which is for JavaScript. So in order to use NPM in Node, we need to go and fire the NPM commands, right? The Node packager commands. So you can see I've created one folder here called as lab1. So let us go ahead and practice the NPM commands in this folder itself. So what I will do is I will type here node. So you can see that this is a node command prompt, and let me go to this folder. So let me browse to that folder here. So now let us say we want to go and get jQuery. As we said, that node package manager is nothing but it will help you to find any kind of JavaScript open source, right? So let's say I want to go and get jQuery. So for that, the command is npm install jQuery. So you can see here I'm typing that command right on the command prompt, right? So with this, what it will do is it will go ahead, it will download jQuery from the internet. Remember, for this you need an internet connection to be live. If you're not having an internet connection, you can have problems, right? So you can see here I've fired this npm install jQuery, and it has said that I have installed one package, right? And the name is, and the version is 3.3.1. And you can see over here, he has installed this jQuery in this folder called as node_modules. Exactly same name, nod_modules, les, as it is, so this is the folder, and you can see jQuery has been installed, right? In the same way, you can get other packages as well. So for example, if you say, okay, I want to get, let's say Knockout, right? Knockout is again an open source library, which follows the view model architecture. So you can see now Knockout is also here. So npm helps us to get any kind of JavaScript software package. You don't have to know the URL, and you can just go to the node terminal and type the command npm install. So now that we have understood npm, now using npm, we will try to get Angular. So the basic goal here of learning Node was to understand npm, and now by using the npm commands, we are going to go and get Angular. Now, if you are thinking innocently, and which you should actually, so can I go and type here npm install Angular, and will it get Angular for me, right? So let us try that. You can see that I have fired the npm install Angular command, and you can see that he has downloaded Angular 1.7. That means he has downloaded Angular 1. And what we are trying to learn? We are trying to learn the new Angular. When I say the new Angular, means 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So we want to learn this new Angular which is there, and not the old one Angular, right? And henceforth, this Angular 1, I will name it as AngularJS. So as a naming convention, I will say AngularJS. So whenever I say AngularJS, that means I'm pointing towards Angular 1.x. 1.x means 1.1, 1.2, 1.5 or 1.7.2, whatever, right? And when I say the new Angular, that means we are talking about Angular 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on, right? So we want to do the new Angular. Now, let me make two statements here. Getting the new Angular is difficult, and running your first project using the new Angular is extremely difficult, right? Let me repeat that sentence. Getting the new Angular is difficult, right? And creating a project by using the new Angular and making something running is extremely difficult. I'll tell you why. The new Angular, just to give you a glimpse, this new Angular is organized in modules. In other words, the new Angular has different modules. So if you want to just do Angular HTTP, you can just go and download Angular HTTP. If you want to do Angular animation, then you can just go and download Angular animation. Now think logically, it is so difficult to go and type commands here like npm install @Angular HTTP. And then I will say npm install Angular forms. Then I will say npm install. You can see that when I said Angular HTTP, it has downloaded Angular 6. Look at that version. So Angular is divided into components, and downloading each one of these components would be extremely difficult. That is one part. And second, if you say that you want to run your first project of Angular by using the new Angular, you need to integrate TypeScript, you need to integrate Node, you need to integrate Webpack, you need to have a project structure, you need to have the tsconfig.json file, you need to have the package config.json file, and so many things. So getting all of this thing to run together is again difficult. And that's where we have something called as the Angular CLI. This Angular CLI is nothing but it is a command line interface which will help you to get everything running for Angular. So it will create a project structure, it will download Angular, it will do everything for you, right? So let us go ahead and get this new Angular. So we can see here the Angular CLI. So we can see the command here, npm install Angular CLI -g, right? So let's go right away here and let's type here npm install @Angular CLI @Angular CLI -g, right? -g. What exactly is this? So let me discuss about this -g. Now in JavaScript, we have two types of flavors. When you talk about JavaScript packages, we have two types of flavors. One is like pure JS files. For example, jQuery. It has just one jQuery.js file, or Angular, it has only JS files. But then also we have packages which are compilers. For example, TypeScript, it's a compiler, it's an executable. Angular CLI, it's an executable, it's an exe. So when we install this exe in our computer, we want to run it from any command prompt. So if I'm either on the C drive or if I'm either on the E drive, I should be able to run it from anywhere. So my expectation here is that if I install this Angular CLI, I should be able to use this from any command prompt. So this -g says install this Angular CLI executable globally, right? So I'm going to go and press enter here. So let's try to install it. Now remember, the Angular CLI takes a bit time to install depending on your internet connection. So let us give it some time and let us see that it gets installed. So you can see that it is downloading. I think in my computer it will get installed faster because it's already installed, right? So you can see that it has got me Angular CLI 6.1, right? So that's the version at this moment, on which this course is built. Great. So we have the Angular CLI now here. Now the next thing is we want to go ahead, install Angular, right? Get the Angular packages, create a sample project, and start running our first application, right? So first thing, let me go to this lab one and let me delete everything because this was just to make you understand Node. So I'm going to go and delete that. So if you go to the Angular CLI here, he has some commands, you can see like ng-new, ng-generate, ng-serve. So you can see, you can go to this site here, cli.angular.io, where all these commands are listed. So at this moment, my goal is to go ahead and create a simple application, right? So for that, I can just go and type now ng-new customer application. Now, once I do that, Angular will go, the Angular CLI will go, it will get all the Angular packages, the latest one, okay? Second, it will go and create a project structure. In this project structure, it will put the test frameworks, it will put a sample code, it will put the Webpack configuration, it will put the TypeScript configuration, everything. So you can see here that it is actually creating, it has created so many files out here, and let us see how it works. So let's give it some time. So there you can see that he has installed the package, he has created the application. You can see that he has installed 1100 package. So 1100 packages to go ahead and do npm install, it would have been difficult, right? So now that everything has been installed, right, and you can also see out here he has created this customer application, right? So let us go ahead and run this application. So for that we need to type here ng serve. Remember, ng create to create the application and ng serve to run the application. So let me press enter and I can see some errors. It says, so if you look at this, can I change the color? I'll make it white. Oh gosh, that's more horrible, right? Let me turn it back. Right, let me. Okay. Okay, so I'll just tell you this. Let me copy this. Must be I can copy this in the notepad. Sorry for that. So you can see out here it says that angular.json is not found, right? And that is right, because everything he has created inside this customer application folder, isn't it? So we need to go into the customer application folder. So let us do an cd and say customer application, and from that folder, so in this folder we have this angular.json, right? It's trying to find that file. So now over here we will say ng serve. So let's do that. So when you do an ng serve, the first thing you will find is that it will actually do some magic, and this magic you can term it as compiling plus bundling, right? So you can see here I have typed here ng serve, and you can see that it's actually compiling. It has actually spawned up a server. You can see that it is actually building the modules, and then it will actually go and bundle the modules. So what it is doing is, in memory inside the RAM, it is taking the whole application, it is compiling, and then it has hosted this application on this port here, HTTP localhost 4200. So let me go and copy this. So let me go and copy this URL out here. You can see that it is building 17%, 26%. So let it complete. 92%. There it is. And now you can see that he has said that it has compiled everything properly. So now let us go ahead and run Chrome, and let us go ahead and see our application. So there you can see your first Angular application running, right? Now remember that this ng serve command has compiled, bundled, it has everything, it has done it in memory. So in other words, you can see in the folder there is nothing which is like a bin folder or dist folder, nothing has been created. So please note that this whole compilation and everything has happened in memory in ng serve, right? But whatever it is, our first application is running, and congratulations, you have ran your first Angular application. So now that the application is created, it is now time to open this application in some kind of an editor, in some kind of a IDE. Now every developer has his own favorite IDE and editor. For example, if you're a Java person, you would like Eclipse. If you're a Microsoft person, you would like Visual Studio, and so on. But what I'll be doing is, for our lectures, I'm going to use something called as VS Code. And later on, after 4 or 5 lectures, I will show you how to configure Angular in Eclipse and how to configure Angular in Visual Studio, right? So you don't have to worry about it. Why I am teaching in VS Code first? Because if you use VS Code, it's an editor. So everything you have to do manually. And when you do things manually, you will learn a lot. So I would suggest that for the first 2 or 3 lectures, stick to VS Code, and you don't have to learn anything more in VS Code. It's a very easy editor. So whatever I'm teaching here is more than enough, right? So you have to just follow me. And later on, after 2-3 lectures, we will plug in Visual Studio, we will plug in Eclipse. Okay. So in order to get VS Code, you need to go to code.visualstudio.com, and you can see here, depending on your operating system, you can go and you can download this setup and install it. Once you install it, you need to go and open this folder. So at this moment, my folder is Shiv Prasad Data, Learn Angular 6, Source Code, Lab 1. So you need to open VS Code. You can see here at this moment, VS Code is installed in my computer. That's the menu. So I opened VS Code and I said open folder. So I went ahead and I opened this Lab 1 folder, and you can see that he is showing me the customer application folder in the VS Code Explorer. Now for VS Code, you need to remember 3 important things. The first one is, you can see at the left hand side, you have your folder structure. So you can see that we are seeing the customer application. Inside that we have the node_modules folder. Inside that we have the SRC, the source code folder, right? So you can see the folders here, And when I click on this, it actually opens up the file at the right hand side. So for example, you can see he has opened up index.html. He has opened up Karma, right? And whichever file is opened out here is seen in this open editor menu. So this one shows the full folder structure, and this one shows which of the files have been opened. So for example, if I close this file, you can see that the open editor menu does not have anything, right? So whichever files are opened out here, you can see it right here. Okay. So these are the two things first you need to remember. The third thing which you need to remember is that we have something called as an integrated terminal. So this integrated terminal, if you click on this integrated terminal, you can go here and you can fire your commands, your command line, right? So for example, I can go and I can fire here ng build, or I can go and fire ng serve. Remember, we just fired the ng serve command through the command prompt. So I don't have to go to a different command prompt here. I don't have to open up a different window. I can do right that from here itself. You can see that ng serve was running in that different command prompt. So it was saying it is in use. I have closed the command prompt. So I hope that now it should run. So three things. One is this shows the complete files and folders. This shows the open files and folders, right? Open files. And the integrated terminal, which you get from here, helps you to go and fire commands like ngserve or npm install or whatever, right? So you can see at this moment again, this ngserve command has ran, it has builded, and it is now showing us that you can go and you can browse your website on this local host. So these three things are very important from VS Code perspective. Great. So that was a very short, quick 2-3 minutes lecture on VS Code. Now the next thing which is very important to understand is something called as TypeScript. So if you see this source code, which has been given by the CLI, you can see these files which are named by this name.ts, right? So all of these files are nothing but they are TypeScript files. And if you go to the TypeScript website and if you read it, they say that TypeScript is a typed superset of JavaScript and it compiles to plain JavaScript. So it's a superset of JavaScript. What do they mean? Now, if you see that we have a lot of developers, who are from C++ background, who are from C# background, who are from Java background, and these developers, whenever they start writing code, they write code in the object-oriented way. So they will use classes, they will use interfaces, they will follow abstraction, encapsulation, they will have properties, they will do inheritance, polymorphism, and so on, right? But when we come to JavaScript, suddenly all these principles are not there as such, means it's a functional language. So basically, you have to do a lot of things, right? For example, if you want to do inheritance in JavaScript, you have to use something called as prototype. If you want to go and create a module, then you have to use something called as closures. So the concepts are very difficult, right? So people who are coming from these background, for them to go and create a serious project in JavaScript becomes difficult because their mindset is object-oriented programming, right? So this TypeScript, what they have done is, they have given you all the syntaxes, where you can go and you can write here like class, you can see right out there. You can go and you can create a property. You can create a method, right? You can inherit a class. For example, you can see I created a class test. I can go and I can create class test1, which extends test, right? So basically this TypeScript is nothing but it is a superset of JavaScript. But at the end of the day, when you compile this, right? When you go and compile this, it will actually emit out pure JavaScript. In other words, for example, if I want to go and compile this code, what I've written out here, I need to go and fire this command called as TSC. This TSC stands for TypeScript. So you can see here from the integrated terminal, I'm typing here TSC. So if I type here TSC, it will go and it will compile all these TS files to JS. So if you see here, you can see that when I hit this TSC, it has created one folder here called as the distributed folder. This is like a finally compiled folder. And this finally compiled folder, if you go to the SRC, you can see that there is test.js, right? You can see there is polyfill.js. And if you go and see the code which we had written, so we had written this code in app component, right? So you can see there is app component.js, right? So at the end of the day, this TypeScript is a object-oriented sugar-coating language over JavaScript. So it has given you sugar-coated syntax of object-oriented programming. You go and you write class, you write inheritance, you go and you can create interfaces. But finally, it has to compile to JavaScript, or I'll say it has to transpile to JavaScript. So that is done by using TSC, and then you can go and see this code. You can go and run this code in the browser, right? So that's what is TypeScript. And one very important point to note here is the full Angular is made in TypeScript. So if you are saying that you want to use Angular, then coding in pure JavaScript is really painful. So for that, TypeScript is important. Let us try to understand the folder structure of this template. So this project structure, which is given by the Angular CLI, let us try to understand it. So let us start with the easiest one, dist folder. This dist folder is where your final compiled JavaScript is. So all that TS file becoming JS, all the final output which you will take to production is all in this dist. The next folder, which is the simplest one, is node_module. Remember when I was explaining you npm, at that time I said that whatever npm install you do, all these packages of JavaScript gets copied into this node_modules folder. So that is this folder. Then we have this folder here called as E2E. This E2E is nothing but end-to-end testing. So this folder actually is where you will go and you will write your white box test, and this white box test will actually go and fire on the source code, right? So this is for the testing purpose. And finally, we have the SRC folder, where we have our source code. So you can see we have the SRC folder. Inside the SRC folder, there is something called as an app, and inside the app we have all the code of Angular, right? So there are 4 folders, which are important. Dist folder for final compiled JavaScript, E2E for end-to-end testing, node_modules, and the final source code folder. If you see the Angular application, it has 3 big technologies which work together. The first one is Angular framework himself. Second one is TypeScript, which helps us to transpile the TS into JS. And the last one is Node, which is our package manager. So for each one of these technologies, we need configuration files. So these JSON files, what you see out here, Angular JSON, package JSON, TS config, right? These are all JSON files or configuration files for these 3 technologies. So for Angular, it is Angular JSON. So all the configurations of Angular is in this file. This package JSON is for Node. So all the packages are listed in this package.json. And for TypeScript, we have tsconfig.json, which has all the TypeScript configuration. You can also see there is a file here called as tslint.json. This tslint.json is used during the linting process. So what is the linting process? Linting is a process, of checking the source code, for any kind of errors. That errors can be programmatic errors. It can be stylistic errors. So these checks are done during the coding phase itself. Means, in other words, for example, I can go here to this app component, and let us say while I'm here, if I do some mistake, right? So during my coding phase itself, this lint process will run and it will tell me what is the error, right? So this linting is nothing but it is a process wherein during the coding phase itself, you go and you check on the source code for any errors, for any issues, right? So this configuration of the linting process is done through this tslint.json. This readme is a readme file. It just tells you the commands, like if you can see here, it's all the commands are listed here, like ng build and so on. We don't need this. We can go and delete this file for now, right? So all these JSON files, what you see out here, are nothing but they are files which are there for configuration purpose. So let us first look into package.json. This package.json file belongs to Node. So as I've said that this is a Node configuration file. So if you remember, I had said that Angular is very complicated to install because you have to say npm install Angular animation, you have to say npm install Angular common. So what the Node team has done, the Node team has given a file called as package.json where you can go and you can list down all your dependencies. And then when you say npm install, so for example, in this folder we have package.json, and if I now go and say npm install, what it will do is it will go and it will install all the frameworks which are defined in this file. So I don't have to say npm install Angular core, npm install Angular forms. I just have to say npm install, and it will go and take all of these frameworks of Angular and put it in my node_modules folder. So this package.json file has the dependencies defined. You can see now there is something called as dependencies, and there is something called as dev dependencies. You can also see there is something called as dev dependencies. These dev dependencies are things which will not go to production. It is used only during the development phase. For example, testing framework, Karma, Jasmine. This will only be used for testing purpose, but when we go to production, this will not be used, right? For example, the compiler is only for the coding purpose. So basically these dev dependencies are dependencies which are used in the IDE or must be in the editor, but it does not ship to production. While in dependencies, we actually refer the core components which we will be using in our project. Okay. So this package.json file has all the Angular dependencies, and because of this only Angular has been installed. The second file is tsconfig.json. This file is for TypeScript purpose. So here you can see we are saying TypeScript that you have to compile using the ES5 mode. You have to put all the, once you compile it, put it in this output directory. So this is for the TypeScript, to say that how the compilation of TypeScript should take place. And I will talk about this file later on. So as I go ahead and I code the application, I will be concentrating more on these things later on, right? So for now, just remember this is for TypeScript. And then finally, we have the Angular JSON file, which is for Angular purpose. Now, let's look at this Angular JSON file in a more detailed way. The way Angular has organized the project, or way the Angular CLI has created the project, it is as follows. At the top, you have an app. So you can see here in this source, we have an app here. And inside the app, we have projects. So you have two projects at this moment. One is customer application and the other one is customer application E2E. That means testing. So remember the way the project is organized by Angular CLI, you have app at the top, right? And inside the app, you have customer application and customer application end-to-end testing. Now, one of the things, which I have noticed is when you try to learn too many things in one go, you don't learn anything at all. So what I will do is I will go and I will remove this testing thing. Testing I will take later on, but for now, let us go ahead and remove the testing thing and let us concentrate on core Angular coding, right? So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I will delete this node. So we just have one project, which is the SRC project, the source code, right? So this folder I will delete for now. Also, I will delete this dist folder because this can be recreated, right? If I compile, right? So you can see I'm trying to downsize the project so that we can focus only on Angular for now. So Angular testing we'll do later on. Also, let me go and delete these files. Editor config not needed. This is for the editor. Git file, we'll delete this as well. So some of these files are really not needed. So you can see now we have only one project. So let us go to this one project and see what are the important properties. Now, please note there are a lot of important properties in all of these JSON files. But as we learn, we will go through each one of them. So we'll not try to learn every property now itself. That will take a lot of time, right? So the first important property in angular.json file is this source root. This source root says that where is your source code. So my source code at this moment is in the SRC folder. The next important property here is architect. This architect actually goes here and tells that which kind of builders will run for which kind of command. For example, if you see at this moment, the Angular CLI has a lot of command like, ng build, ng serve, ng test, and so on, right? So when you say ng serve, so over here he says that, okay, so what is the builder which can serve this command? So you can see that builder name is over here. So this architect, basically has commands, and for that command which builder will help, that is provided, right? So for example, now when you say you want to build this application, so to build this application, he says, first thing, where is the output path you want? So my output path will be, there is going to be a dist folder. In that, I want to go and output it. Which is your start page? My start page is in the source code. There is an index.html. So you can see here in the src folder, there is index.html. So that is the main page, which is the start ts file, right? So basically in your application, you can have customer.ts, customer.ts is calling address.ts, address.ts is calling phones.ts, right? So this main here says that which is the start file you want to compile, right? So that's where I'm saying main.ts. And also we have other files like polyfills and so on. We'll go through each one of them, don't worry. Now over here, so let's go ahead and close this. So at this moment, I am not really interested to do any kind of testing. I'm not interested at this moment to do any kind of linting, right? So I can go ahead and delete these things. You can see how I'm configuring now, right? So you can see that I have just kept two commands for now. One is ng build and ng serve. Okay. Now we have configuration files outside in the main app. So you can think about that. This is the main app, and inside the main app we have a project which is so that is the main app, and inside this we have a project which is customer application. Now in this main app, there are package.json file, tsconfig, tslint, right? Now in the main app you can have multiple projects, right? So for every project, there are JSON files. So for example, you can see this is a tsconfig file globally for all the apps. But now let us say I want to go and tweak something in this. So what you can do is, in the app itself, you can go and create a tsconfig app.json. So now you can see here this tsconfig app.json takes a lot of things from the tsconfig file, but it also adds something special of its. So basically you can have configuration file on the main app, right? And also you can have configuration file for every project so that you can override it, right? So that's why you can see here we are having tsconfig app.json and we are having tsconfig.json on the root. Okay. Also this let us also delete this tslint, tsspec. Why? Because this tsconfig.spec is again a test file. So all of this thing I'm deleting. Remember why I'm deleting? So that we just learn important things. Now if you remember, when we ran ng serve, so when we ran ng serve, it compiled in memory. So the Angular CLI compiled in memory and then displayed the application. But what if I want to go and compile and create a dist folder? Means create a proper folder, right? So for that we have command which is ng build. This ng build command will go and compile your whatever is there in your source here and create the output in the build, and then you can in the dist folder, and then you can take this dist folder to production. So you can see at the left hand side now it has compiled everything to JS. So you can see everything. So now this folder is what you will actually take to production. So you can see he has pasted the index.html. He has pasted a lot of things out here. So I can go ahead, I can copy this folder, dist folder, and take it to production. When I started this video, I clearly said in the first 2 minutes that I will not talk about Angular for the first 40 minutes. So if you see in these first 40 minutes, I talked about Node, we talked about TypeScript, we talked about CLI, we talked about the different JSON files, right? The configuration files, we talked about the folder structure, but we have still not talked about Angular. We did not discuss about this source code folder, right? So now it is time to talk about what is Angular, what is the need of Angular, and then we will go ahead and understand the architecture of Angular. And while doing so, we will understand what is going inside this source code folder, right? So let us first understand what is Angular and why do we need it. Angular is a binding framework. Let me repeat that sentence. Angular is a binding framework. It helps us to bind the view and the model. So as a web developer, we create views using HTML, and probably you create models using JavaScript objects, right? And as a developer, we write a lot of code, which sends the data from the UI to the model and from model to the UI. And this code, which binds the UI and the model is very complex. In other words, if your UI is having a tree view control, tables, right, and your JavaScript object is also very complex, then this binding code becomes complex and complex and complex. So Angular says that don't worry about this binding code, I will handle it. So if you look at Angular 1, in Angular 1, if you look at, this is Angular 1 website, angularjs.org, and this is the new Angular, that is 2456 angular.io. If you look at this Angular first website, right, you can see clearly out here, they say that we are a MVW framework. So if you move your mouse here, you can see right out there, when they started, they clearly said we are a MVW framework. Look at that word out there, MVW. MVW means you have a view, you have a model. So this view is in HTML, right? The model is in JavaScript, right? And then in between we have code behind. Now this code behind, a lot of developers have given different names to this code behind depending on the technologies they use. For example, some people call this code behind as view model, some people call this code behind as presenter, some people call this code behind as controller, right? So whatever name you want to give, right? So when they started Angular, they said that W stands for whatever. So it said that whatever you want to name this code behind, we will take care of it. So Angular is a binding framework which binds the view and the model. And this binding code, whatever you think about, will be handled very easily by Angular. You don't have to write those heavy code behinds, sending those key events and then raising the events back from the object, right? So that's why if you see this word right out here, it says I'm a super heroic JavaScript MVW framework. So model, view, and the binding code, whatever name you give to that code, is what Angular does. That's from what Angular started. But definitely afterwards, Angular became more ambitious, and I'm very happy that they have done more things other than just becoming a binding framework. So now if you see the vision of Angular, it has become much more wider. It says that we are one framework which you can use in mobile as well as desktop, right? So let us start with that first thing, what they started, that they are binding framework, right? So let us first understand that how is Angular handling this binding thing. Let us first understand that. Now, before we get into the Angular framework understanding, let us understand how Angular CLI organizes our project, right? So how does Angular CLI organize our project? So the way Angular CLI has structured a project is, so we have the SRC folder at the top, or you can say this SRC folder signifies the project. And inside the project, you can have applications. So you can see by default, they have created something called as an app. So now this app can be a ERP application. It can be a hospital management system. It can be an inventory application. So there is at the top SRC, and then you can have app, you can have app 1, you can have app 2, and so on. If you remember, some minutes back, I deleted one app, which is the testing application, right? So if you want, you can have multiple apps. And if you expand this app folder, you will see a lot of things out here. But for now, just concentrate on this word called as component and module. So let's concentrate on two words out here, component and module. So we said we have HTML UI and we have the JavaScript model. And Angular said that it will take care of binding between the UI and the model. So this binding code in Angular which binds the model and the UI is termed as components. This components is that part of Angular which actually receives data from the UI or the events from the UI and sends data to the UI, right? So you can think about that we have view, we have model, and the binding code, what is there in between, you can term that as a component. Now, normally in an application, you can have a lot of views, you can have a lot of components, you can have a lot of models, right? So a group of components is termed as module. So you can have saying that, okay, I have a module called as, let's say, accounting. In accounting, I can have journal components, I can have voucher components. I can have a module called as hospital management system, right? In that, I can have components like patients, doctors, and so on. So at the top, we have something called as a module. The module groups the components, and the components binds the UI and the model. So the component has the binding code of the UI and the model. So this is the basic structure of Angular. So each one of these code out here is meant for that purpose. At this moment, we do not have a model. At this moment, we do not have a model. We just have the component. But please note, as I go ahead in the video, I'm going to go and talk about the model. So in the diagram, I am showing you the model, but at this moment, by default, the code what is generated by the Angular team does not have the model. But this is the architecture which you need to understand. UI, model, component, and modules. So now first, let us start with components and let us understand the code of components. Because as we said, components is the binding layer between the UI and the model. So this is the heart of Angular. So let's first try to understand this. But before I go into components, let me also start deleting things, which we will see later on. So for example, you can see this app component.spec.ts. This is the testing part of Angular. So in other words, if you want to test your Angular components. So at this moment, I'm not really interested. So we can delete this, right? So let's start removing things, which are not needed now. Remember I said, first learn the basics and then try to take other things, right? So I've removed that as well. Must be I can just check in ng build. My build is okay, right? Okay, so let us start with components. So as I've said, components is the binding layer between UI and model. So you can see here, there is this class name here. They have named it as app component. And in that, they have created a variable called as title. So there is a variable called as title. And in this title, they have named it as customer application. So whatever application I had put, they have put in this title. And this title is consumed in this UI. So you can see here, this title is consumed in this UI. It's displayed in this UI by using this two curly brackets. And here also I'll do like this. Let me go and delete all these down links. They are simple HTML, right? The Angular part is only this much, okay? So you can see now the component talks with the UI, right? So the component is this class app component. It is talking with the UI and it is trying to display this title on the UI. And for that, it has used something here called as expression. These two curly brackets are expression. So what are expression? Expressions help you to display values and properties of a component on the UI. So if you want to just go and display this title out here, you can just put the curly bracket, the name of the variable, and then double curly bracket, right? And you can mix this with HTML as well, so you can say, welcome to my first application. So the good part about expressions is that it can be mixed nicely with HTML. That's why a lot of people also term this as interpolation. So this also is termed as interpolation. So we have a class app component. It is exposing out a variable. It is getting displayed out here. But now the next question which comes is, what is that thing which connects this app component? So what is that thing which connects this component with the HTML? What is that code which says that this component is the code behind or is the binding code of this UI? So that is done by using something called as decorator. So you can see here, we have a decorator here called as @component. Now this decorator has different names. For example, if you are from Java, then you would be probably naming this as data annotations. If you are from .NET, you normally call it as an attribute, right? So in .NET, you will find developers doing like this, class test, and then they go and they put annotations, they put decorators, or they put attributes in such a way with a square bracket. A Java guy would put it as like this, @test, right? So this is their annotations. So here, people term it as decorators in JavaScript. So whatever it is, this decorator here, @component, defines what this app component can do or how it should work, right? So you can see in this decorator there are three variables or three properties, I can say: selector, template URLs, and style URLs. So you can see this template URL, it tells that this component is binded up with this HTML. The style URL says this component is binded up with this CSS. Leave this selector for now. We will talk about this selector after 10-15 minutes, right? So this template URL is the person which binds the component and then HTML. So you can think about this @component is a decorator on this class app component. Now this component actually comes from Angular core. So you can see at the top there is an import statement, import component from Angular core. This Angular core is nothing but your core framework of Angular. So if you remember, in your package.json file, we said that we had installed the Angular dependencies, right? So one of the dependencies, from where we can get Angular components is Angular core. So this code here says from Angular core, that means from node_modules folder, from the Angular folder, from the core folder, please import component, and this component is nothing but the decorator. If this code is missing, if you miss this code from here, then this component is not found, right? So this import statement here is like the using statement in C#, using namespace. Or if you're from Java guy, then it's the import statement, right? So that is the decorator component. The next important thing here is the module. Remember our architecture diagram where we have said that we have a UI, we have a model, the UI and the model is binded by a component. Again, I repeat, at this moment, we don't have a model. So in this ready-made code, which is given by the CLI, we do not have a model. I will be creating one in the coming videos. So we have the view, we have the model, we have the component, and group of components are clubbed or grouped into something called as modules. So you can see here, we have this class here called as app module. Now remember that everything is a class. If you create a component, it is a class. If you create a module, it is a class. If you create a model, it is a class. So you can see that there is a class app module, and on the top of it, there is a decorator called as ng module. Remember, for module, the decorator is ng module. For component, the decorator is component, right? So these are all decorators. So in this decorator, we have two important properties. For now, we'll concentrate on two important properties. One is declaration. So in this declaration, we give all the components which will be grouped in this app module. For example, at this moment, we have only one component. So that's why we have given this only app component. But let's say that if you had two or three more components, I could have said, okay, app component. For example, now let us say I had more components here. For example, let us say I will say here we have app component 1, assume, right? And it is connecting to, for now, let's keep it, let's say we have app component 1 and it is having at this moment no template URLs, assume, nothing like this, right? Let's say it does not have anything for now. So you can see now we have two components at this moment, and you will see we have two components at this moment. So in this module, we will say, okay, we are going to go and group app component, and as well as this will group, let's say, app component 1. So we will, in the declaration, we will say that this is app component and this is app component 1, but the startup module from this is app component. So in module, this declaration is used to define, which components will be grouped in this module. So we will have component 1, component 2, component 3, and this bootstrap says from all of these components, which is the startup component. And in order to use this component in the module, we need to go and define here. You can see that I'm saying import app component from component. So look at the syntax here, because we need to first import it, right? Without importing, we cannot use it. So we are saying here import app component and app component 1. Both this app component and app component 1 at this moment is, this is that app component in the app component.ts, right? So you can see here, this is the module, and this module is importing these components. And in these components, this physical file, we have two app components, app component 1 and app component, right? So both of them are imported, and the way the import is written is, it is said here app.component. He did not say .ts. And you can see that he has put a dot slash here. Look at this dot slash. Why dot slash? Because it is in the same directory. If it was not in the same directory, let us say if it was in some top directory, then we have to say double dot slash, right? And in the same way, you can see that we have imported the ng module. Without this ng module, this decorator will not work. And we have also imported something called as browser module. I'll come to this later on, right? So at the top, there are two imports, and these two imports are actually importing the Angular components. So these two imports are actually importing the Angular components, and this import is importing your custom components, right? So Angular module is nothing but it actually goes and it groups components. And in order to group the components, we need to go and define them in the declaration. And before declaring, we need to import them. And we also have something called as bootstrap, where we define from these declared components, which of the component has to be instantiated first, right? Which is the startup component. So the startup component is declared in the bootstrap, and we also need to go and import the ng module decorator so that we can start decorating. Now also here I would like to highlight one important thing here, import and export. You can see like we have this app component out here, and this app component here is consumed in this app module. Now this app component can only be consumed in the app module if there is an export. If I don't put this export here, if I don't do this, you will see that this import is showing me an error. So remember that if you want to export or if you want to import a class, you have to first export it, or else you cannot import it, right? Good. For now, I will not use this app component 1. So let's keep it, right? Good. So we have view, which connect, we have view, we have models. The connection between the model and the view is done by components, and the components are grouped by using modules. So in the declaration, we define them. In the bootstrap, we define the startup component. Now, when you talk about complicated applications can have a lot of modules. For example, you can have a stock component, you can have a purchase component, you can have a billing component, and everything gets grouped into something called as inventory. So you have inventory module, and inside that you can have these components. You can have a journal component, you can have a voucher component, and they get clubbed into something called as accounting module. You can have an about us component, you can have an home component, you can have an index component, and they get all clubbed into home module. So you can have a lot of modules. So now Angular needs to know that from all of these modules, which one is the startup module, and that is defined by this file here called as main.ts. So in this main.ts, we need to go and import the module, and we need to say here, platform browser dynamic, please bootstrap this module first. So for example, at this moment in our case, we just have one module. So you can see here it is saying platform browser dynamic, please bootstrap the module which is app module. But if you have 3 or 4 modules, right, then you need to specify which is the startup module. So this main.ts defines which is the startup module of your project. But now someone has to go and invoke this main.ts, right? And that is done by index.html. So first thing what happens is the index.html starts. So the end user comes and he loads this index.html in his browser. The index.html goes and he calls the main.ts. The main.ts then calls the app module by using platform browser dynamic. The app module then goes and loads the app component by using this bootstrap, and the app component goes and loads your HTML because in the template URL the HTML name is specified, and after that your bindings will start working, right? Now if you see in this index.html, there is a small element given here called as app root. Now this tag over here can be also named it as my app root as well. It does not matter. You can also name this as my app root. You can name it whatever name you want, right? This is nothing but it is called as a selector. Once the HTML page has loaded, once this app component has loaded, this is the selector. This is that section inside which the app component HTML will run. So if you see this app component.ts, in this we have something called a selector. So in this selector, we have defined that name, app root, my app root, root one, your root, whatever name you want to give, right? This selector says that load this HTML inside this index HTML inside this selector. So these are termed as selector. So basically the index HTML, it invokes the main.ts. The main.ts invokes modules. The module invokes component. And once the HTML is loaded by the component, it gets loaded inside this selector. So over here, this selector defines that thing, where to load your HTML. The other important file which is worth discussing here is polyfills.ts. Polyfills are nothing but, but they are open source frameworks, or they are things, which can make your new JavaScript work with old browsers. For example, let us say that you want to go and exploit the new syntaxes of ES6 and ESNext, right? But these new syntaxes cannot be parsed or cannot be compiled by the old browsers. So that's where this polyfills comes into picture. Now remember that these polyfills are not coming directly from Angular team. So they are coming from some other open source framework called as core-js. Remember, so this is not really coming from Angular team. From Angular team, what is coming is only these things: Angular animation, Angular common, Angular compiler, Angular core. So this other thing like core.js, RxJS, they are coming from some other third party, right? Remember, Angular only has these many components. TypeScript does not belong to Angular. Node does not belong to Angular. Polyfills don't belong to Angular. So Angular is a binding framework, which has proper HTTP, proper validations, a good compiler, and it uses, a lot of other new JavaScript technologies, to make your development better. So please understand that Angular is one of the things in this, right? But the way Angular team has ensured that it makes all the new technologies run together is commendable, right? So remember that this polyfill really does not come from Angular team. It is a separate open source library. It is maintained by a separate team, but they have chosen it because it ensures a very nice compatibility with the old browsers. So now that we have understood the flow of Angular, we have understood the various participants like components, modules, main.ts and all that, right? It is now time to go live. But going live is not so easy, at least in case of Angular. Why? Because there are series of steps that needs to be performed. The first thing what we need to do is we need to go and use TypeScript and compile these individual TS files into JS files. So all this app component, app module, main.ts, polyfill, and also the Angular frameworks, right? Because if you see over here, we are using Angular core. So even that has to be taken and put into a JS file. So the first step is all the TS files has to be compiled into JS files. All that is used over here, for example, Angular core and so on, those files also has to be included as a part of the final build. So that is the first process. The second thing is we would like to also do bundling. For example, you can see here, we know that the app module and app component, they use each other. So rather than creating separate JS files, we would like to create one big bundle. For the main.ts, we want to create another bundle, right? So we would like to go and bundle things, which are connected. For example, modules and components are connected. So we would like to bundle them, because if we bundle them, then we have to just make one call, or else from the browser, we have to make multiple calls, isn't it? So the second part is we need to go and do the bundling. The third part is we want to take this CSS and HTML, copy them, and put it into a bin folder, or we can say a dist folder, or you can say your final folder, right? So you can see there are a series of steps we need to perform. First is we need to go and transpile the TypeScript to JS. Second is we need to go and do the bundling. And third is we need to take all the necessary CSS and HTML and the icons and put it into one folder, right? So this all things is done by a very nice build management open source tool called as Webpack. The name itself says package management, Webpack, right? So Webpack is an open source framework, which helps you to go and take your web application, bundle it, compress it, make it smaller in size, and put it into a final folder. Now what they have done in Angular is the CLI team has included, or called the Webpack from the CLI itself. So in other words, when you actually say ng build over here, internally he does the Webpack thing, right? But said and done that, it is very important to understand Webpack separately. So we will talk about that. But at this moment, whenever you are doing ng build or whenever you are doing ng serve, right? All this internally, this compiling and bundling process, everything is done by Webpack. So internally, Angular CLI does that, right? So if I go and now call the ng build, right? This ng build takes all of that and puts it into the dist folder. So this final compilation is done by ng build, but please note internally it uses Webpack. And in the coming videos, I will be discussing more about Webpack, because if you do not understand Webpack properly, then you do not know how the build and management works for Angular, right? So when you do an ng build, what it does is it actually goes and bundles it, compiles it. So you can see building the modules, and once it builds the modules, it will actually go and create the bundles. So you can see now, let me minimize this, right? So if you see right out here, you can see that he has created main.js, right? He has created polyfill.js, he has created runtime.just.js. So you can see that he has created bundles. And if you go to my dist folder, right, so over here, everything is here, right? And also one more important thing to note here is, if you look at the index.html out here, this index.html is not calling any JS files. And if you remember, I said index.html should call the main.ts, or I'll say main.js file, right? So that all thing is done in the bundling activity. If you see this index.html, you don't see any JS files out here. But if you see the index.html, which is in the dist folder, you will see there are some JS files. So you can see here, when you say bundling, this process of putting the necessary scripts is also done by Webpack. So you can see all of these JS files have been included, right? So the final HTML, you can see here, has the polyfill.js, the styles.js, the runtime.js, vendor.js, main.js, right? So that is the build part of Angular CLI. When you call the ng build, internally it calls Webpack, and Webpack does the compiling, bundling, and creating the final output for go live. Let's quickly also walk through the 5 JS files here once again, because there are some new files here, vendor.js and so on. So let us try to understand each one of them. First one is runtime.js. Remember I said we have something called as Webpack, and this runtime.js has those files which are needed for Webpack. Then we have polyfills.js. This JS file helps us to run new JavaScript in old browser. Styles.js, all our CSS files are bundled into JS files and it is put here. Then we have vendor.js. This vendor.js is nothing but your actual code, what you have coded. So if you see at this moment, we are going to go and write actual code in app component. This is our code. App module, this is our code, right? So in this vendor.js, you will find code, which is related to app module. So if you see here, this is app module, then we have app component. So vendor.js has the code files which are your custom coded files, right? And then we have the main.js file. This main.js file is the file which actually invokes the module. So if you remember this main.ts, which is later transpiled into JS, this is where the start module is entered, right? So these are the 5 files which you need when you actually try to go live in Angular. Now I would like to also point out one more thing here. Remember I said when you do an ng serve, everything happens in memory. So when you do an ng serve, it compiles in memory, it loads your code in memory, and whenever you request for that file, it is all loaded from in memory, right? If you want to go and get these compiled files, then you cannot go by using the ng-serve. In other words, if you see, when you actually go by ng-serve, you would see something like this, right? This is the customer application. You can see, if you remember, I have removed the links. So that's why you don't see the links out here. And remember this welcome to this customer application. This thing is coming because of that interpolation, right? Because of the expression. Okay. Now, this is all coming from in memory. But if you want to go and load the files from the production, that is from the dist, right? Then you have to type here /dist/customer application. Now this one is coming from the hard drive. So please note, both of these things are two different things, right? So when you are actually requesting from here, you are actually requesting the in-memory thing. But when you are actually requesting things from here, then this is coming from the hard drive, right? This is the actual physical file from the hard disk which is rendered. So that brings us to the end of this session. Now, this was an introductory session. So basically the goal here was to understand the fundamentals of Angular. If you're really interested in the intermediate and advanced videos, you can go to my site here, questpond.com, and you can see the rest of the videos. My plan for the next lab is that I'm going to go and cover, create a simple customer screen which will have customer code, customer name, customer amount, a simple grid with the add button and so on, right? So my lab 2 would be more like intermediate and advanced, where I will try to create a project. And the next thing is this source code, what you see out here. You can get this source code by going to questpond.com. This is the site, and you can click on this demo videos link. And over here, there is a section which is saying learn Angular 1, 2, 4, 6, right? So you can go here and you can say download Angular 6 source code. Now this is created in Angular 6, but it will also work for Angular 7 and the forthcoming versions as well, right? And also one request out here, it takes a lot of hard work to create these videos. If you see, this is a 1 hour for video. Literally, I have spent like 3 days after this, because we have to create the diagrams, we have to make things right? So please go to facebook.com/questpond and please rate my training, because if you rate, that will encourage me, and if it encourages me, I will record more. So please go to facebook.com/questpond and please tell me that how this video was. So thank you very much. Keep learning. Thanks a lot.